Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And this season of the pod already feels kind of long, yeah? You guys probably don't really notice because, it just appears when it appears, and y'all probably aren't really thinking about seasons and when's the next episode, but I do. And it's funny because it already feels like we've covered a lot, and it's barely even, I think, a third into season 5. So hopefully that's kind of exciting, because that means that we have so much more to go, so many more questions to answer. Hopefully maybe some guests on in the future. That's not me trying to allude to something I just truly don't know. But yeah, let me know who you would like to see on the podcast, who you'd like me to have a conversation with. If there's a book you'd like me to kind of book club episode. That's something I've thought about doing but haven't done yet, of reading a book and sharing my thoughts on it. And maybe I post about, which one I'm going to be reading ahead of time or something. I'm not exactly sure. Or having the author on. I don't know. Lots of ideas. And also, as always, if you have a question about anything in your life, specific, general, whatever, send it to me at theevergreenrx@gmail.com or text or call me at 512-655-9888. I will definitely get back to you, and hopefully you can hear your question in an episode in the future, because that would be cool and fun for both of us. So yeah, I am kind of just chilling. I'm not sure. This is always the part where I'm I could give an update. I could do a little personality moment of this was on my mind. Some of those other, kind of mental health podcast girls do. But I don't know. My life is usually pretty stable. I mean, not that I'm not always thinking about things and having experiences, but I just get to this moment. I'm oh, hell if I know what to say. But yeah, I'm getting excited for the holidays. It's always a busy time, so I'm trying to be more intentional about going slow. This morning, I slept in a little bit later than I normally would, and I had a lot of dishes to put away, and I was finding myself kind of wanting to rush through it because I needed to get going on some work I had to get done. And I was fast has never really been better, and I'm probably not going to get that much more done anyway, or I might just make more mistakes and stress myself out. So I just tried to take it slow, and I ended up shattering a glass, and it shattered, I'm not kidding you, into 1,000 pieces. It seemed like it was theatrical glass. It was from IKEA, but it shattered into so many different pieces, and I was okay. So this is going to take me a while to clean up, and I'm just going to take my time doing it and not try to do a million other things at once or, rush the process. I'm just going to be here cleaning this glass, and then I will move on. And yeah, there's not really anything profound to say about that other than I think I was a little bit less stressed out because I wasn't trying to make it go any faster. And I also have still gotten plenty of work done by this point. So it was okay. And I just want to take that spirit with me into the holiday season so I can just really be present with the fun things that happen, the socializing, actually enjoying the season while it's here, because I think there's so much anticipation before a new season, and then there's so much longing or nostalgia for it once it's over. But then when we're actually in it, it can just kind of fly by, or yeah, I feel I can just kind of miss it. And so I'm trying to just, be here now, as always, being really present. So anyway, that is the update, and doesn't really have anything to do with today's question, but I'm really excited to get into the listener question because it's kind of, it's in the attachment styles, attachment theory kind of realm, relationships, how we relate to other people and find intimacy and feel comfortable with that. How do we deal with any discomfort that we have? And so that's, really big topic. And I think a lot of you guys are interested in attachment, if you have like any kind of, moderate level of dabbling in the psychological therapeutic world, you probably have some familiarity with this concept because it's just very central. It's very central to how we develop and sustain healthy relationships, but also, where a lot of our wounds can come from. And it's really central to the way that I work as a therapist as well. I work primarily from an attachment-focused lens, and so I like talking about it. I do always kind of get in my head with things like this because I could not possibly cover everything about attachment theory. I can't possibly even accurately represent all of the nuance with attachment theory and styles. And it's not the only thing I'm going to talk about today. Like it's just a large part, I think, of answering this listener question. But yeah, I always get a little bit in my head because I'm like, I can't like be the definitive source on this. But I don't think that's what you guys come here for anyway, listening to this podcast. So I'm always trying to represent things as accurately and as informed as I can be. But in that same vein, if you are new here, the Evergreen RX is all about creating your own prescription for living well, which means that it's going to be very individualized, very fluid and flowy and nuanced. And, I really want you to have this space to explore these concepts and ideas and like think more deeply about your own life, but in a non-dogmatic way, in a way that is more permissive and allows for your own kind of thought and learning, and to kind of take what we talk about here into your own life and see how it applies and how it doesn't. I think there's like a dying art of critical thought and longer form discussions because we just have answers so quickly at our fingertips. But I think that's really dangerous when it comes to the mental health world, because there's not answers, and to put on that there are answers and that you have them, I think can be really dangerous. And so that's what I'm not trying to do. Yeah, try things on, take what you want, leave what you don't. At some point, it is my intention and dream to make a community space for all of us and have a way that we can communicate and talk to each other and meet each other or get together, whatever. That's the dream. And so stick around because that's what we're building here. Okay, that's enough of a preamble. I would love to welcome the listener into the Evergreen Apothecary and hear their question. Okay. I've realized I crave closeness, but I also get scared when someone actually tries to meet me there. I'll pull away, get distant, or convince myself I'm not ready. How do I cope with this so that I can actually have real intimacy? Like I alluded to, I cannot really even get into this question without doing a quick little primer on attachment styles. Primer? Is it a primer? Primer? Just went on a deep dive on if it's pronounced primer or not, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure out. I think it is. Anyway, I need to talk a little bit about attachment styles just for a second. So if you're familiar with this, hang in there with me, because I actually think that you might hear something new or think about it in a new way that could be interesting, or it's just a good quick refresher. So what I've been talking about this whole time, attachment styles. There's 4. They kind of fall into 2 camps: secure and insecure attachment style. Secure is obviously the dream and the like, oh my God, I'm like securely attached, and so I'm confident in relationships and I know myself and I'm okay with being with other people, and I'm not clingy, but I'm also not avoidant. Great. Awesome. There's like some research that says like a large portion of the population are securely attached. Not sure. Don't run across them that often, it seems, but apparently that's what they say. And then the other kinds, the 3 others, fall under the umbrella of insecure attachment. Those are avoidant, anxious, or disorganized. And there's some other names for these attachments that I won't get into, but every now and then you hear things like referred to as like fearful avoidant instead of disorganized, or preoccupied, or whatever. There's different names, but the main ones that I use are avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. Okay, so what are these? What it means when they fall under insecure attachment is that there's been some kind of unmet need or attachment rupture or ruptures in our early development that created a less than ideal attachment patterning. And I say that with literally no judgment as someone that also doesn't have a secure attachment, but also like it's just very natural. It's very, very common for someone to have an insecure attachment type or to experience attachment wounds and ruptures as a child. Because the deal is, like, they don't have to be big things. They can be very small. And I don't know the last time you've seen a baby or toddler and how much they require and how much attention and love and attunement and that is needed to meet that child where they're at any given moment. And it's impossible to do that perfectly all of the time. And it doesn't mean it had to be exactly perfect for you to develop a secure attachment, but depending on, your natural predisposition, your genetic makeup, just your temperament, whatever, people can have different sensitivity levels to even small ruptures. So one child might experience small ruptures from their parent or caregiver that they just kind of like are able to, it rolls off their back. It just doesn't really cause any long-term effects, while another child with the same parents or caregivers might develop a more insecure attachment just because of the way that they're predisposed. And that doesn't make anyone better or worse. It's just how the dice get rolled out. And so I'm going to do a quick little scan over the 3 types of insecure attachments so that we can be on the same page. So avoidant. This is not feeling but dealing. The primary focus of somebody with a more avoidant attachment would be functionality at all cost. There is a need for control, and this can cost this person a feeling of closeness or vitality and energy, because so much energy is going towards maintaining control, kind of maintaining a close wrangle on their emotions, not letting it get out of hand, just functioning, dealing, being self-reliant at all cost. Okay, then there's anxious attachment, which you could say is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of avoidant. So this is feeling and not dealing. Anxiously attached people might be a little bit more connected to their emotions. Again, large oversimplification, but more connected to their emotions, but they have a compass outside of their body versus inside. So it can be really dysregulating. Oh, you're upset with me? Now I'm upset. Or you're just upset in general. Now I'm upset. There's a lot of kind of feelers being out in the environment and everybody else around you, and kind of using that to determine how you're doing and if you can feel safe or not, versus your own internal compass on like how you're actually feeling. So with anxiously attached people, that's oftentimes the person that like can kind of read the room or is really good at picking up on how other people are feeling. So this is relationship at all costs. There is a deep fear of being abandoned or alone. And so somebody with this attachment style might put the relationship first, even at the cost to themselves, their own happiness, their own stability. More people pleasery types can fall into this camp. And there can also be a difficulty with emotional regulation and coping. That's the feeling but not dealing. Having feelings, being connected to that, not needing to have the wrangle on it like somebody that's more anxiously attached, but also not having the ability to kind of know what to do with it or to deal with it on your own. So there's a lot of reaching to other people to make you feel okay instead of being able to do that within yourself. And then lastly, there's disorganized attachment, which can be a little bit more complicated, but in a short way, it's not feeling and not dealing. So there can be more dissociation, more disconnection from self, and also a lot of overwhelm with that. Emotions, overwhelm, functionality can either be compromised or is achieved, but at the cost of feeling real. So you can function, but maybe it's like functional freeze. You're a little bit outside of your body, disconnected from yourself, just to kind of get by and to be able to mask the distress of your emotions and the distress that comes from being relationally connected. Because there's an overall difficulty of being with self and other in this case. So it's a bit of a mix of both anxious and avoidant. So I am not going to label anyone with any specific attachment style. I'm going to leave that for you. So even this question, when I read the listener question, it's like, okay, maybe my thoughts start going on what kind of attachment this might be, but I'm not going to label that because I think it is a lot more complicated than sometimes the simple explanations make it seem. I have had this experience firsthand. I am more of an anxiously attached person, but I also have attributes that come out that are much more avoidant in nature. Kind of depends on the relationship that I'm in, what I'm getting from the other person. There's so many factors that I can't even definitively say, like, oh my God, yeah, I'm in the anxious camp. And so I always present this way. I always feel this way because I have felt a spectrum of different levels of comfort and security in relationships that could be described on the surface as falling into any of these attachment styles. And I also have more secure tendencies as well and have definitely grown into more of a secure attachment. So don't slap a hard and fast label on yourself. I think it can be really helpful to know what your primary attachment is, what you tend to use, but holding it with a light hand. Because I think there is a growing awareness of the fluidity and nuance to attachment styles, and that there can be a primary style while still having a, presence of other attachment styles, traits, characteristics, or behaviors, depending, like I said, on the context, on the relationship that you're in, a bunch of different factors. So knowing that and having that ground floor, the next thing I'm curious about is, what is your relationship history? When have you been hurt before and how? And keeping in mind that a lot of ruptures can happen pre-conscious memory. They usually happen when we're really young, and they might not be really big either, like I was saying. And so you might not have a conscious memory. You might have always kind of felt this way, that you long for closeness, but when you start to get it, it makes you, really uncomfortable and want to pull away or get distant. You might have always felt that way. There can also be more experiences and significant life events that then influence or start to increase this behavior and make it more prominent as you get older. Say you have like a slew of romantic relationships that end in heartbreak, and however you kind of internalize that or able to process it or not can start to increase that fearful kind of relationship to closeness and intimacy that might not have always been so pronounced for you. Usually our early attachment patterning will kind of lend a hand into how we start to protect ourselves in relationships. So even if, through a slew of life experiences, you've started to get a little bit more gun shy and more scared of relationships, your predisposition might start to come out more like, hey, I lean a little bit more avoidant. So now I'm, starting to play my cards close to the chest a little bit more with people. I am less prone to actually say what's going on if something is upsetting me in a relationship, versus somebody more anxiously leaning, where it's like, oh, okay, now I have anxiety getting to know new people. I feel physically kind of on edge. I want to check. I want to ask them, how are you feeling? How is this going for you? Do you like me? Like, do you really mean it? Things like that might show up more. And where I find myself coming back to again and again doing these podcast episodes, especially with questions relating to relationships, is that there's kind of a 2-part approach to changing this. One is going to be going to the past to do healing work on old wounds and pain. And this has like a bunch of asterisks next to it. I have a caveat that I'll get to in a second. But the second part is using relationships right in front of you as exposure therapy. We want to do it in tandem. And where that caveat comes in is that you may go to the past, quote unquote, to heal old wounds, old moments of, being hurt, being let down, being abandoned, shut out, reprimanded, taught that, closeness and intimacy is not safe, that your emotions are weak, whatever it may be. But you're always doing that in a present relationship, either with yourself or with someone else, like a therapist. So you may be working with a memory, but you're getting a new experience of that is safer, loving, supportive, attuned, ideally. And that's where the healing comes from. So while it is an old memory, the healing apparatus is in the present and in that present, safe, loving, attuned relationship. And like I said, this can be with yourself. But, we can kind of get caught up in what it actually means to go back and heal things from the past, or if that's even possible. But there is always a present level to it. And how we heal those things is through getting our needs met in the now. Whether that's, just by being heard by someone, kind of being witnessed in that, or by using imagination and giving yourself, your younger self, what you always needed at that time that you didn't get. And the other part is the exposure therapy, which just keeps coming up, and it's a really good way. I think a lot of people talk about, is it possible to heal our attachment wounds while currently in a relationship, typically a romantic, intimate partnership. And I think it's sometimes controversial to say yes, but I really do think it's possible. Obviously, it matters who your partner is. If your partner has no interest in doing any of this work or healing their own stuff or improving the way that y'all interact or communicate, that is going to be harder. And I'm not going to say impossible, but you're going to hit more roadblocks. But if you have someone that is on the whole engaged, loving, wants to try their best, willing to listen, I think a lot of this work can be done and very powerfully in that relationship. And so how are some of the ways that we do that? So noticing the fear as it comes up for you and getting curious about it can help create space between yourself and that experience. So that it starts internally, just noticing that fear. Maybe, you're getting to know someone new and that craving for the intimacy is coming up. You're talking about something a little bit more meaningful. Maybe they're sharing how they feel about you or how much they appreciate you. And you start to feel really uncomfortable and you want to distance and you want to push this person away. Noticing that, noticing how it shows up physically, what kinds of thoughts you have, helping to create the space instead of feeling super identified and just kind of caught up in, oh my God, no, I actually have to distance. It's the only way I can be safe, blah, 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 blah. And even better, this is the exposure therapy, is if we can name it with that other person and say, hey, I really want this, and I'm also really scared right now. I want to talk more about this, but I also feel like I can't. It doesn't feel safe. Whatever it is, naming both parts. Because sometimes it can really surprise us too, how people can rise to the occasion and soothe a lot of those fears just in the moment. And it can be such a wonderful healing moment of getting a new experience, sharing something that is vulnerable to say, hey, I want this, but I'm scared. And having someone meet you there and be understanding or caring in return can have a lot of healing power. So working up the ladder of exposure is important too. I think I got this idea from ERP, exposure and response prevention, but they talk about creating a ladder of exposure scenarios. If you have a fear of snakes, top of the ladder is going to be touching a snake. That's going to be max exposure. But at the bottom, it might just be hearing the word snake. picturing a snake or a part of a snake. You can really, really break it down, and it's going to be personal to every single person what kind of falls on the ladder of intensity. So start at the bottom, girl. Start small. Start little exposures to other people, to relating and feeling closeness without pushing them away or without doing that immediately. Because our goal, no matter attachment style, is to be able to feel present in ourselves by being present with another, to feel and deal while relating. And I did not come up with this. I'm not exactly sure the first person that maybe put this language to feeling and dealing while relating, but it's not mine, so I'm not trying to take credit, but it's a very helpful way to think about things. That is the goal. Connecting to ourselves, connecting to our emotions, to our physical sensations, while being able to have them deal with them in a manageable way, not being completely overwhelmed and just taken under by them. And while relating to somebody else, connecting to somebody else, to their experience, being able to be present with them while you are feeling. And so the last thing I'll say about this is understanding yourself and why intimacy feels so uncomfortable, kind of where I started with those first questions of like, what is your relationship history? When have you been hurt before? How? That can be really helpful, so you have a good reason to feel the way that you do. And it doesn't mean you're broken or you won't ever feel okay with the closeness that you desire. What is so great about attachment and the studies and the research that's been done on it is we can change. We can earn secure and feel much more comfortable with intimacy and closeness than before. And so, understanding that this work that you're doing will make an impact, and you have good reason to feel scared or to want to push away when someone's getting close. And we always have a choice to notice that and to choose how we want to act on it. If possible, noticing and vocalizing that desire to push away without actually pushing away every time, so that you can get so that you can really firsthand experience that you will be okay and that it can be safe with people that have proven that they're trustworthy and kind, that you can feel safe while being in connection with them. So that's about all I've got. There's tons more that can be talked about with just attachment and relationships in general. I find that I really enjoy talking about relationships, and that as the Evergreen RX develops, like maybe even moving more and more in that direction, because it's just such a huge, vast topic. So yeah, ask me your follow-up questions below the podcast, and let me know what you thought about this. If anything kind of sparked off for you that you haven't thought about before, you didn't realize about yourself, or if you kind of try some gentle exposure therapy, let me know how it goes. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck with all of that. I hope that this helped, and I will catch you next Wednesday.